Today's NDE was sent in to the channel's email by a man who describes his own unique journey to the other side, meeting beings of light, and then Jesus, and the knowledge he gained about why we are here. Let's get into it. Beyond death. The year was 1984, and it was my 15th birthday. My dad and I had went out to the mud pits near my house for a day of riding three-wheelers. When you grow up in the South, there isn't much to do to occupy your time if you don't have a driver's license yet. Some people may have thought this was father-son bonding time, but I saw it for what it was. This was little more than a distraction to keep me busy and away from my house, while my mother decorated for the surprise party I had known about for weeks. Whatever, if it made her happy, I could spend the day with Dad. The mud pits themselves were a series of wooded trails with mud obstacles that loomed around almost every turn. For anyone that knows, three-wheelers were not known for their safety features, and at the wrong speed an inexperienced rider could easily flip one over on themselves. Not a day went by that someone in my school wasn't showing up in an arm cast or walking on crutches. I myself had suffered a fractured wrist just 6 months before. Anyway, I was following my dad, and we were both going about as fast as we could push the engines when I hit a curve, lost control, and the last thing I remember was face planting into a big tree on the side of the trail. At this point, I can't say everything went black, because it didn't actually do that. It was more a case of 1 second I was in my body, and the next I was above it, slowly drifting skyward. I could see the scene below as my body lay in a twisted heap. I watched as my dad turned back and raced to get to me. Part of me wanted to yell out, "I'm up here," but somehow I knew he wouldn't be able to see me. I never saw a tunnel or a bright light that others have experienced. Instead, I floated higher and higher, out past the atmosphere where true space began. Looking back at Earth was an amazing sight to see. Somewhere down there is the shell of a body that was me, I thought. I have no idea on how long I had ascended into space before I saw it coming towards me. It was a being made entirely of light that fluctuated in brightness. I don't want to use the word dim because it never was, but the fluctuation caused it to glow brighter at times and less bright, but still bright at others, if that makes sense. This being reached me, or it, and began to immediately communicate with me. "It is not your time," the being communicated. I want to point out that all communication between the being and myself was strictly telepathic. It seemed easier, faster, and required less effort, so I never questioned why it was this way during my time there. We were soon joined by a second being of light, and together they made the decision to accompany me to another place to see him, as they called it. For a while, it seemed as if we floated all around the universe, which in itself was pretty cool, but eventually we saw what I will call a planet, for lack of a more correct word. This planet was huge. Even from up high, I could make out what appeared to be cities larger than any on Earth. Not only cities, though, the countryside was even more expansive, and everything seemed clean and pure, so unlike the Earth we know. I half expected to land in one of these cities and meet some alien race, but that was not the case. Instead, we descended onto a hilltop overlooking a beautiful stream with waters clearer than any I had ever seen. There was a man there with his back to me. He wore long flowing robes that were whiter than white, with gold accents at the wrist and neckline. His shoes were simple old leather sandals, nothing fancy there. As he turned to face me, I noticed he had what I would have called at the time a foreign look, but after living this long, I now recognize as a Middle Eastern skin tone. "You took quite a fall, but you aren't supposed to be here yet," the man said. "You saw that?" I asked. The man, who I now know was Jesus, said, "I was watching, and now you are here early, so what would you like to do?" Not understanding the question, I repeated back to him, "What would I like to do?" Hearing this, Jesus looked to the being and said, "He doesn't have all his memories back yet." The being approached me, and I can't even describe what happened next. Simply by touching my hands, I began receiving an upload, for lack of a better word, of knowledge. I now understood everything, and believe me, you have no concept of how much everything actually is. I saw that this was not my first, second, or even 10th lifetime on earth. I saw past, present, and future all at once because in reality they all happened simultaneously. I saw that this place I was now at is home, and it is where all souls return at the end of a contract life. I saw that reincarnation, while a reality, is not mandatory. A soul must contract asking to live a life on earth in order to be sent there, and I also learned that earth is not the only place where a soul may gain knowledge. I thought to myself, but why would I contract to go to earth? It was no prize with all of its problems, hunger, homelessness, wars, and such. Instantly the answer was made known to me. I had asked to contract to earth to gain knowledge that was not available back at home. At home everything was pure and good, so to experience a host of emotions not offered there, we come here. How can you understand how bad many things are if you have never experienced them? If you have never known hate, how can you appreciate love? Some souls visit earth once, and some opt to return over and over. Can you not just teach the bad without experiencing it? I asked. Jesus replied, if I tell you something is wet or hot without you having felt wet or hot before, would you understand? I was not about to debate Jesus, and what he said made sense. Are you ready to return and continue your contract on earth? Jesus asked. Looking around me, I knew I was going back. As much as I longed to be home with Jesus, I had made a contract to come here, and I planned on finishing it. I woke in the hospital bed to find my family sitting bedside. My poor mother looked as if she had been crying, and she let out a scream of joy as soon as I tried to sit up, which they of course would not let me do. They said I had taken a life flight on the hospital's helicopter to get there, even though I don't remember it. The three-wheeler wreck had broken my nose and cheekbone, and swelling of the brain forced an emergency operation. Both my eyes were black. I looked like a roadkill raccoon. I had to stay in the hospital another 4 days before the surgeon let me return home, and my mother immediately made my dad sell our three-wheelers. I did get my surprise party even though it was almost a week late, and I was genuinely surprised since it was no longer my birthday. Over the next several weeks, details of my NDE began to fade, so I wrote down what I could remember. I never tried telling anyone because I don't know where you grew up, but a southern mama will beat your butt if you start rambling about meeting Jesus and reincarnation being real. She would have sent me off to the first all-boys Christian school that she could find and prayed they could fix me. Even now, I want to remain anonymous. Not everyone is ready to accept an afterlife that they did not learn about in church. Thank you again for allowing me the chance to tell someone about my experience. God bless you. Let me know your thoughts on this one in the comments below. Until next time, stay blessed.